What's up, everyone? This is Camera Work Podcast. I am John Ricard, and you can always find me on Instagram at JOHNRICARD. I have a guest, and I love when we have guests because we don't have a guest every single week. And our guest is Jordan Brady. Tell them where to find you first before we talk about who you are and what you do.
Oh, wow. You know, I tweet obsessively at DRI Jordan Brady. That's Director Jordan Brady, DRI JORDAN.
Now, are you active on Instagram as well?
I'm starting to get into Instagram. I love Instagram. My kids are on Instagram. But I'm the same there. I'm DRI Director Jordan Brady.
Right. Now, personally for me, Twitter is just... The 140 character, I can't get into it. It's too much work. I feel like I'm Prince. You know how Prince would have these song titles like Nothing Compares, and it was like the number 2 U with the letter U, and then you have to write like that on Twitter. And how do you get around that? Because that is so aggravating to me. It literally makes me just abandon the platform.
When Two Are in Love was one of my favorite Prince songs.
There you go.
You know, I find that creativity needs boundaries. I work in commercials, in making advertising. It's either 15 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute. Right. It's not 57 seconds. It's not 23 seconds.
Right.
It's usually 30 seconds, right?
Right.
And I like those kind of rules. I like that, you know, a film, when I go to the multiplex, is not 3 hours.
They almost all are
Some
now.
Some are now, right?
Amazing.
The Kraken comes at around 2:10.
Right.
So with Twitter, to answer your question, John, is I like it. Really? That it limits you, and you have to be creative. You have to choose your words.
And it's funny, I believe
and you don't
in that,
go on and on.
Yeah, I believe in that as a principle, and I talk about it on a podcast all the time. I do a ton of my work on a Leica M240, you know, the rangefinder, there are, you know, limitations like crazy on that. And I embrace the limitations, and I agree with you 100%.
It fosters creativity.
It really does. It makes you work around certain things, and it just, and I look at it too, like when you have like a poet, he's taking the hard way to say what he says. He doesn't just go like, hey, I had 2 choices to make and I took the hard choice. No, he says I have to make this rhyme, or I have to fit it into like stanzas or some kind of haiku thing. Right. Sure. So yeah, I agree with that embracing creativity thing. Embracing limitations to help creativity.
The limitations actually can fuel the creativity.
Right.
Because you're you know, there's a new camera that just came out that has it's like 40K, right?
Right.
It's going to do away with green screen because every pixel has information, recorded that you can change later.
Wow.
And in the video, there's a guy saying, like a producer going, well, you know, this way you can delay those choices and change things later. You don't have to decide on set.
Right.
And I watch going, well, what's wrong with making a decision before you're on set?
It's like a committee that can't make a decision. Like, nobody knows what we should do. Like, we don't know what to do. We'll figure it out later.
Sooner or later, you're going to have to make a decision. Why not start checking those boxes?
Right.
Now, it's great to have the latitude to change things later. I think these tools are great for effects.
Right.
I did a film one time. It's on Netflix now. It's called Waking Up in Reno.
Okay.
It has Billy Bob Thornton, Charlize Theron, and the late great Patrick Swayze.
Right.
And so it's old, but it's on Netflix, right? So I see it the other day, and I was thinking, a great cinematographer that worked with me. And his name was William Fraker. He shot Steve McQueen's Bullet. If you're too young to know that
I remember that.
Rosemary's Baby was a classic, right? Not a remake.
Mia Farrow.
Yes.
Look at that.
So I was going to have this Steadicam shot all through this hotel room.
Right. But they didn't exist back then?
No, it did exist. It did exist. And he said, well, where are you going to cut? And I go, I'm going to cut here and here. He goes, well, then you don't need the Steadicam.
Who's this, Billy Bob Thornton?
No, Bill Fraker, the DP.
The DP.
The cinematographer.
Okay.
Right. Billy Bob was in the dressing room having shenanigans. He was during that movie. Great performance by Billy Bob Thornton. Billy, call me if you're watching this video on YouTube. But Bill Fraker pointed out to me that if you know where you're going to cut your shots, you can either lay track, or if you have a Steadicam, you tell them an A and a B.
Right.
Or A, B, and a C if it's a complicated move. You know, plan your shit out.
Right.
And can I cuss on your...
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
Sorry,
Go
John.
crazy. Just speak normally.
Yeah,
conversationally. Okay. That's it.
So... then I had a scene that went all the way through a hotel room, conjoined rooms, like connected rooms with the bathroom connected. And we built this set. He goes, that you need a Steadicam for, because so the tool serves the story.
Right.
The tool and the limitations of the tool.
Right.
Like everyone wants a drone.
Right.
My buddy's coming tomorrow, man. He's going to say, I love drones.
Right. Tell them what is tomorrow, just really quick, so they understand. What when you reference tomorrow, what are you referring to?
Tomorrow, which may be yesterday by the time you're hearing
Yeah,
this,
it may be a few days ago. Yeah.
is Commercial Directing Bootcamp. CommercialDirectingBootcamp.com. This is a seminar, an all-day boot camp that I give as a director of TV commercials and web commercials to other filmmakers.
Right.
So they're not students, they're not people learning about lighting or cameras. They know all that.
Right.
They want to get into directing
And I think
commercials
that's
for money.
interesting. And I think sometimes when you have workshops, a lot of times everybody loves to give the lighting 101, basic filmmaking, basic, and a lot of times people just aren't qualified to give the more advanced type workshop. But the problem too is when you attend it, you're just getting all this stuff that you know. And like from a photography perspective, the guy starts teaching like the inverse square law. And you're just going like, this doesn't need to take half an hour. And it's just completely irrelevant to anything that's going to really go on at the photo studio. Like just get to like some interesting lighting setups or something. But you mentioned to me, the people that are attending, you kind of pre-screened them. You made sure that they actually knew filmmaking already. So you can kind of skip like, this is what ISO is.
Right.
And really get to what? What are you going to get to? Since we're not going to be talking about like ISO. Or
We're going to be talking about how to not be a dick and run a set so that ad agencies will hire you again, so that the crew will work harder for you, how you can be a leader, and how when you go home, help your wife clean the kitchen. Like how to live sanely as an artist, make a living, and not be a dick. I mean, that really is part of it.
Yeah,
the other part is an overview of how the business works, because you have a lot of directors, filmmakers that are making music videos, that are making content for, and I used air quotes if you're not watching on YouTube, because to me it's still filmmaking.
Right.
But their budgets are low. So I'm going to try and explain and help them plot a career path that allows them to get bigger budgets.
Interesting.
And how you get people, it's within the limitations topic that we were talking about.
Right.
Conversely, I see all these filmmaking schools around the country that'll take anybody, and they say on their website, you'll learn scripting, editing, cinematography, how to cast, how to work with I'm going, but in the real world, that amalgam of a person is the weakest one. I mean, it's good to have a varied background. You should know as much as you can. Right. But I'm not going to be the cinematographer.
Right. It's more about having the team is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
It's about being able to build a strong team.
Yes.
Right. But let me ask you something. We're going to go on a slight tangent before we get back to what you do, because you talked about the limitations, right?
Yeah.
So this is an interesting segue. So I just got this camera, and I want to thank the guy first who actually sold it to me. I rented this a couple of times from a place called Kit Split. Guy was a grand fantastic.
Blackmagic.
Yes, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. And
this is a new one?
It's the same camera they've always made. Yeah. The one that's like 2 years old or whatever.
Isn't it beautiful?
I love it. It sells for $1,000. I managed to buy it used. I don't think he'll mind if I say the price, but he sold it to me for $500 after I rented it from him like 3 times. But the guy was so cool. Like he said, when I said, do you want to sell it? And he said, yeah, I want you to have it. And I just thought it was such a cool way that the person was, because we were just now talking about treating people correctly and limitations, which we'll get to in a second on this camera. But, he gave me like 6 batteries, the finder, the camera, an SD card, a little case to carry it in, the AC adapter, battery charger, $500. Fantastic.
Can't beat it.
You cannot beat it. But this is a camera that has some serious limitations. I don't know how familiar you are with it. Well, the battery life.
I borrowed a Blackmagic, both the original big one.
The larger one, right?
The larger one.
On this, the battery life from a full battery to it just turns off might be anywhere between 7 and 14, 15 minutes. Oh, wow. I don't know when and why.
A little higher. So
there it goes. Yeah, I don't know if they can see it. But
beautiful.
the battery life just drops. It just goes like
7 minutes, you said?
It could be 7 minutes of filming, and the battery just dies right there. Boom, dead. And you're watching the battery counter go 65, 64. Like sand falling through an hourglass. It's crazy. And it has an extreme crop of 3. So this 21 millimeter lens that's on it now turns into a 60. That's a huge limitation. I'm going to pick up an 8mm if my wife is not listening to the podcast. I'm going to pick up an 8mm for like $200, one of these like Rokinons or whatever, and that'll get me to like a 24, and I'll be fine at that point. But
it's beautiful.
Has a lot of limitations, but man, the file is gorgeous. Like the file is like
it's built also to hold.
Feels fantastic.
Yeah.
It feels so good, but it's the file, man, it's a flat file, which is probably what you're used to seeing. Like it looks like what did you do? You know, what did you like wash the film or something is what it looks like.
It can scare you the first time, right? The
Oh
first
my
time you
God,
see
yeah.
a raw file.
Yeah,
I remember
it threw me
in
off.
film when we
Right.
started shooting digital and you saw this washed out milky thing. You're like,
Yeah, you're scared.
Whoa,
But
what's-
I love the file, and I really love this camera right now, and I really do just want to thank him because I know he knows, and I know he could have put it on eBay and got a higher amount. But I really appreciate when people are that way. And I said, look, I'll like you come in and use the studio, a couple days, whatever. Like just trying to give him back something. Like it's just so cool that people can be that way, and I think it's nice that people can just be right sometimes, man.
Well,
So
look how
thank
we
you to
met.
him, Andreas. There you go, right? Coming in to do the workshop, whatever. And I'm like, dude, come do the podcast because like you've done some stuff, but I want to get back to you because we got you here and we don't want to waste time talking about it.
Well, I love the camera, and I love
It is
I love that
gorgeous, though.
you've embraced the limitations. It's like there was a craze.
Very aware of the limitations on
I remember
this.
a craze a long time ago when a Fisher Price. You remember like kids' toys.
Right.
Fisher Price made a video camera that recorded on cassette tapes.
Okay.
And it was called Pixel
Does
Vision.
sound familiar.
Like
That
it was
really does sound familiar.
I think
yeah.
it was the Pixel Vision,
Right.
and it was in the late '80s. It came
Right.
out or '90s, and
Right.
I bought one had it for a while and
Right.
lost it, and it was so cool because it looked
Right.
like a VHS Super 8
Right.
hybrid.
Right.
And for a while, people were doing festivals. There was a festival of these kind of films, which I think is crazy. They embrace the limitations of that. Or in filmmaking, people do they'll have a certain aesthetic, or documentarians will say, I'm only going to shoot what's real.
Right. And I know for me, for example, I mentioned like this Leica that I like to use. So for example, like when I shoot the jiu-jitsu tournaments, right, which is one of the most boring things in the world, watching these two guys just lay there. It's fun to do it. To watch it is really dull, and to photograph the matches are so easy that's not really a lot of fun because it doesn't move around a lot. It just
I would
kind of
think
stays there.
jiu-jitsu would be action-packed.
It's not. No, it's guys standing there pulling on each other's gis if it's a gi tournament. But the funny thing is what I like to do at the tournaments is
Pulling
when
on
I,
each other's gis.
It's not interesting, trust me. And what is interesting though is when I walk around with the Leica and I've got a 21mm on or a 24, and I'm photographing the emotion off the mats, guys who are relaxing, guys who are crying, guys who are happy, guys who are being comforted by their girlfriends after a loss or a victory, guys talking to the coaches, like those shots I love. And again, with the limitations, it's like I find with almost anything, I kind of wish all my photography only took place on my Leica, and that I only photographed things that I could shoot on the Leica, because those types of things that the camera is suited for tends to be what I like, which are things that are not super fast, things that are not super far away,
Right.
things that I don't necessarily have to shoot 300 pictures on to nail the shot, But yeah, I've never been afraid personally of the limitations. But I'll tell you something interesting. I was at a seminar one time with a guy named Chris Burkhardt. This guy's a landscape photographer who has over 1 million followers on Instagram.
Oh, wow.
Guy's tremendously successful. And when you look at his work later, please look at the work. It's unreal. This guy spends like 7-8 days traveling to locations to shoot these location shots, and that's why the following is so big, because he's so dedicated to it. And he said at the workshop that he uses a Sony a6000 camera, which is a very easy camera to use. It's like a point and shoot. And sometimes he could just like raise a hand and go brap and shoot 11 frames a second and get the shot. And I actually asked him the question. I raised my hand and I said, do you put any limits on your creativity? And I don't want to speak for him. It's a workshop. It might have just been an off-the-cuff answer. Maybe if he were writing a blog post, he would give a different answer. But his answer at the workshop was, no, I don't put any limits on my creativity. Why would I do that? He goes, I just use whatever tool's going to work, and that's it. And I thought it was interesting that his opinion was so different from mine on it. And I went, oh, I guess his opinion's right, because he's got 1 million followers, and I've got like 3,000. But it was just funny that he had, again, I'm not saying that that's his hard opinion. I'm just saying what he said at a workshop on a Tuesday, whatever month, whatever. But I just thought it was interesting that he had a kind of
Perhaps
slightly different take.
his limit is no limits,
Maybe.
right? He's embracing every kind of tool. I've always said that the tools don't equal the talent, and that someone can take a little power shot,
right,
and that becomes the book cover.
Yeah. And we're actually at the point now where the tools are better than the talent, because
Yeah,
our
way.
iPhones are better than any of
Sure.
us. Like, forget about it.
Hey, the Hefe filter has saved a few of my iPhone shots before I posted them. But you know, I remember one time I did a commercial, and the cinematographer, Peter Tischhauser, South African guy. This is years ago, but we were talking like, what if we could only use one lens? And we picked a 24 millimeter, which I don't know what that translates to.
Yeah,
it's still a still camera, but it's a fairly wide lens. Like, it's not a 21, it's not an 18 wide.
Maybe it's a 35, maybe something like that.
But it's like a good workhorse lens.
Right.
And we did most of the commercial with that lens, just moving the camera around. And then, of course, we're never going to compromise the work, so we busted out some other ones. But it was just a matter of like a creative exercise, which I think is fun to indulge in.
Of course.
To put some stuff on
to
there.
put the limit. Especially, if there's not a lot at stake. You do it on the personal work, and you can transfer it to the professional. Now, let me get back to you, though, because there's... By
the way, let me interrupt. You know what the funniest filmic lens is?
What?
The 40 millimeter.
What is that?
The 40 millimeter mimics the human eye.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Like a 40 mil... A 75 mil is sexy,
right?
You shoot,
it's like your tight shot.
Yeah, that's good. A 35 or a 25, 21 could be a wide establishing shot in a scene, but the 40. Right. The 40 could be a nice, just two-shot people talking.
Yeah. I picture that as a 35. Like, that's like the 35 on the Leica. It's probably just perfect. The rangefinder view fits it perfectly, and it just, for me, I could shoot everything.
And it's very observational. Like, if you're watching something on a 40 or this 35, you're like, oh, I feel like I'm in the room with them.
Yeah, that's stuff I like.
I'm observing the scene.
Yeah. Again, I take a decent number of jobs because somebody calls me and it's a paycheck. But in reality, I would never put a lens longer than 85 millimeter on my camera ever. Everything I shoot would be because I just want to be close. Yeah. If I'm shooting longer than 85, I'm probably far away, and I'm just not interested in photographing far away. But let me get to you, because I can't waste you being here. Let me try. I'm trying to think of where we're going to go with you, but let me try two ways. Okay, let's take this. We're going to take a kind of low-end question and a high-end question. The low would be this. When you do a commercial, right, around how many people might be on set as part of the crew? Just give me a number.
55 people.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, for somebody who's
and that's not including 10 people from the ad agency and 4 people from the client. Right.
Okay. So the question, this is what I'm going to call the low end question. For someone who's trying to crack into that, and this is their first time that they get that opportunity to be a PA on one of these sets, right? What are some of the things either that they can do wrong to make sure they never get invited back? Or if you want to look at it as, what are some of the things that they can do right that does make you kind of notice this one man or woman or guy or girl out of the 55 and say, let's make sure this person is back on the next gig?
That's a great question. I have specific people coming to mind. Right. The PA, like you're talking entry level, they're breaking in,
Yeah,
right?
we're going to start with that question first, right?
The kid that shows up and is a team player and is attentive and manning their post, as it were, I noticed that. And I noticed that they're willing to chip in and they're not on their phone. I was doing a job recently where 2 of the PAs it was for a couple of days, like a 3-day shoot. Every time I would look over, the 2 PAs were on their phones talking and texting. Right. So when I see a PA that's not doing anything, but they're attentive and they're watching the gaffer light the scene, they're watching me. Right. I always ask a PA when I have a moment, I go, whose job do you want? Whose job on this set do you want? If they go, oh, I don't know. Well, cool, you don't know. Yeah. I like the kid, male, female, doesn't matter, who says, I want your job. Right. And I'll say, come watch. They'll say, I want the producer's job. They usually want the director, the producer, or the AD, which is the assistant director that kind of runs the whole set, or they want to, they often want the cinematographer's job. So if they're not watching how we're doing it, I know that they're not serious. The things they can do that I go, I never want to see them again, talking too much, texting, voicing their opinion, rolling their eyes if someone says something, like just a negative attitude. Yeah. My son is in the business now, and he's been on my sets, and there's no, I like when you said you like people have a good time, the makeup's laugh, they're I lead with humor and a light spirit.
Right.
I think the days of cracking the whip and being an asshole are over.
Not necessary.
I think it's an old mentality.
Right. Two things. One.
Did I answer that question?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Yes, that's a very good answer for that. I'll tell you two things. One, I'll tell you my own personal dislike the most is when someone
hygiene.
is what?
Bad hygiene.
No, I don't care about that. You could have the bad hygiene. What's worse than that is the bad attitude. And what I don't like is if I'm working a lower level job and people act as if they don't have to bring the A game because it's a lower level job.
High five, buddy.
There
High
you
five.
go, right?
They
We're
go,
on point with
I'm
that,
only,
right?
it's so on point. I preach this. When you say yes, you give 110%, even if you're making 64% of your money. If I'm doing a freebie, and the guys I work with, mostly in LA, but all around the country, here in New York, when you say yes, you're there just like you're getting your full
That's what I
fucking
truly
rate.
believe that. And again,
it's a pet peeve.
And I mentioned jiu-jitsu, man. I shoot these jiu-jitsu tournaments sometimes, and the rate is so low, I would be embarrassed to say it to you. With the podcast off, I'd be embarrassed to say it to you. I bring my A game. I shoot every match. I'm running around like a lunatic. Why? Because I took the gig. I can turn down a gig and say I don't want to do the gig, and plenty of times I will turn down a gig. But if I take the gig, I bring the A game. And I don't like if I'm on set with someone and I can sense, what, like we'll be shooting someone and they don't know who that person is, and they're bringing the D game, and then they start talking. Let's say it's a hair person, and they start talking. They find out like, oh, she works for Epic Records. Oh, now all of a sudden you're taking pictures with her and you're talking nice to her because you realize she can help your career. That I don't like. And on a quick side note, by the way, now that'll take too long. It's not even an important story. Let me ask. I had two things to say.
You had a
and
high
I forgot
question.
One of them.
You had
I had
a
the
low
higher
question.
end. Yeah,
What was the high end question?
Here's kind of the higher end question, and this one's really easy. And I know you could knock this out in like 5 or 6 words. I'm sure.
Oh boy.
How do you get the big high end jobs?
The relationship, and not caring about the revenue. Because I preach the 3 R's that someone taught me. I didn't make this up, but I've embraced it, and I teach it at the boot camp.
Right.
tomorrow.
And what does the real need to be? What's
the real has to be primo. Your real is your portfolio. Your real is, to me, first and foremost. And the relationships are something that it's your commodity. It's something you build over time.
Relationships with whom?
With
the team?
I mean,
or
in my
just,
business, no. In my business, in commercials, advertising, it's with the ad agencies, the writers and the art directors, the copywriters, art directors, creative directors that work at the ad agency, the agency producers who they're sort of the backbone of the project because they'll try and match a director to a commercial script.
Right.
And the relationships I have with my own team, but really that's secondary to getting the big job. That's executing once you've gotten the job. Right. So I tell people if I can satisfy one of the 3 R's, it's either good for my reel, I do it for free.
Right.
If it's to meet new people that are cool and I like their work, do it for free. I mean, when I say free, and you're listening, don't call me and say,
now they're all calling you. Yeah, we got a commercial. Yeah.
Or
we got a Kickstarter project.
Truthfully, it could suck.
Right.
But it's a boatload of money.
Right.
Then I would do it.
Right. What were the 3 R's again? Say it again.
The real, the relationship, and the revenue. So if you have a job that fulfills one of those R's, do it.
Right.
But when you do it, regardless of which R, I'm with you, man. Give 100%. You got to bring the A game.
So, like again, this is an example on a completely lower level than what we're talking about with you. But you take the jiu-jitsu tournament. So I trained at a school. My school might send up to 80 people to the tournament. So I love as competitors. So I love being at the tournament and being able to photograph the guys from my team. So when I'm there photographing that extremely low-paying tournament, I'm having a ball. I love being there and supporting the team and photographing them. I'm going to be there all day no matter what. If I can make a couple of bucks doing it, fine.
But it's a relationship. They're your friends.
Relationship. I love these guys. I love being. I don't want to be home and I don't want to be watching the tournament from the audience. I want to be shooting it. So that's that thing about loving it. So I definitely get that. But the real is probably a hard thing to get to be really good, though, isn't it?
The real takes time because when you're starting out, the catch-22 is when you're starting out, you get offered mediocre scripts. Right. And no matter how much you polish that turd, it's not going to be an A+. Right. So a lot of guys will shoot spec commercials. My wife is a commercial director. She got a script from an ad agency that they were going to make and decided to do the other one with the whale.
Okay.
Right? So she did the one with the tree.
Okay.
And she went to the Cannes advertising, festival, the Cannes Lion. It's a big thing. It's like spring break for advertising.
Okay.
And with that one commercial that we paid over $20,000 with favors to make and edit it and color correct it,
that
mix
you guys
it. We
paid
extra.
saying?
Yeah, we paid out of our pocket. So she
get
would
the
have
footage in your reel. In other words,
to make the reel.
Wow.
And then and the people that we made it for were already friends.
Right.
And they were happy they got their work made.
Right.
So the revenue was in the minus column, but the reel and the relationship were great, and it got her more work. It's paid for itself 10 times.
Yeah, and you also have to think very long term. You can't think short term like, I'm losing money. Okay, you're losing money today, but it can come back to you tomorrow.
And the biggest thing is the mistake people make is they'll go, yeah, I'm making it used to be Bud Light. Now people make those Doritos commercials or whatever, but they'll put their girlfriend in it. And like, yeah, my girlfriend's hot. Right. And I'll say, okay, so you're doing a Bud Light lime spec commercial, a fake Bud commercial that's got to look real, and you wrote it, but you're not a copywriter. Okay, that's a strike against you. And you're going to art direct it yourself because you're good. You have a good eye, but you're not an art director. You're not collaborating. Okay, another strike against you. Your girlfriend's going to be the hot Bud Light. Is she Bud Light hot?
Right.
Like I know
is she the
she's
hottest
hot,
girl at her office, or is she the hottest girl in South Beach?
Right.
Big difference.
Because if you were casting it, wouldn't you get some hottie? And I'm not trying to sound sexist or
no,
anything.
I get completely what
to
you're
me, it's
saying.
a good example. Like you're no, I'll get
Yeah.
my friend
Yeah.
and my buddy's going to DP. I think when you do your work to make your reel, you're the only one getting favors. Like let the hot model get something for her reel.
Right.
But you're not calling your neighbor because she's cute.
Right.
Your bro who's building a cinematography reel. Do something else to help him. Right. I'll carry sandbags to help a brother.
You have to you have to be really serious and kind of almost like say brutally honest, kind of with yourself. And you really have to say, like I said, my girlfriend's the hottest girl in her office, but she's not the hottest girl at a South Beach casting. She's not right for this. Or my buddy wants to be an art director, but he's not really there yet. I got to get a real art director, even if I got to spend a few bucks to get the real art director. So this looks worthy that I could show Bud Light and say, look, I could do your next commercial.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
What do you mean? Whoa, look at that spin. That's a camera problem.
That was fun.
Go.
You don't show Bud Light. They're never going to watch. I mean, there are examples where people made stuff and showed it to the people they made it for, but that's not how it works.
So how would that work? What would you do?
You would show it to other people that would hire you for their commercial that they need to make right now, right here with this budget.
Okay, because you've got those elements in place, something similar to what you did.
So if I make a Dunkin' Donuts commercial, there's no
this
department.
is the Dunkin' Donuts commercial that you created.
I go,
on
hey,
your own dime.
I want to be a commercial director, and I'm just shooting these donuts, and I got the top cinematographer, and I hired a model to eat it. Slow motion, the fan.
It's Carl's Jr. donut.
It's Carl's Jr. of donuts. Perfect.
Hey, let's make this. Come on, let's go.
I like
We got a space right here. Let's go.
I don't make it and show Dunkin' Donuts. That's an option, but that's not the point. The point isn't even to show Hill Holiday in Boston, who has the account to make I think they still have the account, to make the Dunkin' Donuts commercials. The point is to put it on your website, on your reel, so that other people go, that's an awesome Dunkin' Donuts commercial. We should have him do our Juicy Juice commercial. We should have him do our, White Castle commercial.
They'll find where that fits in.
Yes. You don't make it for the product that you want to do another commercial for that product. I did a Bud Light spot.
For the real Bud Light.
For the actual Bud Light.
Okay.
Out of DDB Chicago is a big ad agency. And I never did another one. And I had a great time, and I got paid, and we shook hands, and I've tried to work with them, like they bid me on stuff. And I did it for very low rate. because I thought I would get in with that agency. I've done some
Right.
McDonald's spots for them. Right? That wasn't the real win. The win was to show other people that go, he did a Bud Light spot.
Right.
And it looks like a Bud Light spot because the formula fits
Right.
the other spots of the
Right.
of the time.
Right.
Yeah,
It was in
yeah.
keeping with what they do. Right.
So many people do outrageous commercials on their own. And when you show it to the professional, not me, you show it to the ad agency professional and they go, yeah, but that's not the kind of commercial American Express does. American Express doesn't have a guy arm wrestling and
Right.
you know, they use Tina Fey.
Right.
So no matter how good it is, it doesn't fit the brand.
It's wrong.
It's
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. And then
And
you're
it's-
just trying to
and it's
knock yourself
beautiful.
out now. They're like, it's nice, but you don't get it, and you're out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could still get a win, like, oh, well, it's a pretty film, it's a funny performance. It's hard for me because as a comedian writer and a writer of comedy,
Right.
I think I can write good scripts, but I think ad agencies write them better.
Right.
I
And you have
can
to be
tweak
honest
them.
with yourself
Yeah.
and say, I'm not the best guy to write this. Let me get the right guy to write it and make sure it's done properly. Right. That makes sense. Right. All right. It's been fantastic
It's been a
talking
lot of
to
fun,
you,
man.
man. Fantastic. And I really appreciate you. Tell me again, where do they find about the workshops? Tell me again, where do we find
I'm
it?
going to make it simple. JordanBrady.com.
Got it.
Because at JordanBrady.com, Jordan like Michael Jordan, Brady like Tom Brady.
And Mr. Brady.
You go to JordanBrady.com.
Right.
You got the boot camp. You got my podcast.
Right.
You got you can get a T-shirt. No one buys a
Nobody buys the
Nobody
t-shirt.
buys a T-shirt. And you can see my work. You can see my work. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Cool, man.